Yesterday, Chicago Mayor Rahm Emanuel fired the chief of police amid the protests about the Laquan McDonald shooting. And the media today is focused on whether Rahm Emanuel took an active part in covering it up, and they're treating it as a debate, and it's not. It happened last fall. The police commissioner saw the video days after and admitted yesterday or the day before that he saw it, and it didn't match the account that the police gave initially. The state attorney saw it shortly after that, did not move to indict the officer who had been employed by the police department right up until last week, and even though all these people had seen it. And why? Well, this wasn't long after Ferguson and Rahm Emanuel happened to be in a close re-election battle, and just 5 days after he did win re-election, they gave the family $5 million, even though they had never sued them. And part of the settlement was that the family couldn't release the video because they had apparently obtained some video of the shooting. So these are facts. This was a politically motivated cover-up, not even counting the police allegedly deleting the video that was from the surveillance tape in the local Burger King. So today, Emanuel finally announced that he won't resign. Peter, how does he survive this when he's straight in the center of this massive controversy?
By doing it. The people of Chicago, well, it's the whole big lie thing. If you're gonna lie big. And in fact, Emanuel said, fine, here's the size of the balls I'm bringing to the table. If you got bigger ones, come after me. He throws the police chief under the bus, which is enough for a good chunk of Chicago to say, well, I guess he did something about this. And he challenges them. You got a problem with this? Have a recall election.
I think you're partially right. But I think yesterday, after the police chief was fired, I think we actually saw protests flare up even more because I think they smell blood.
Yeah, maybe. Rahm is extremely well connected. He was a high-ranking official in the Obama White House. He and Hillary aren't necessarily good friends, but they share political ambitions and similar, and a need to kind of watch each other's backs. And I think Rahm's feeling is, hey, I'll just ride this out. Protests don't last forever. The Chicago winter's coming. And Americans are reliably distracted by, the next shiny object that media.
What is that, Peter? What is that?
I agree, Peter. Within 2 or 3 weeks, nobody will even remember this happened.
I don't know. When you look at Ferguson and the outcry there, first, you got
maybe longer, but.
Yeah, but you did get the cop, and he wasn't indicted for, because of the prosecutor, but it was taken to a grand jury. The police chief stepped down ultimately. They do last a while. The pressure definitely lasts a while. The protests don't stay in the streets.
There's many of the shootings I disagree with, but I think the Ferguson one, especially in Michael Brown's case, that one's a little more gray in terms of the officer not being as in the wrong. There are other shootings like Tamir Rice. That one's disgusting. One that we're obviously talking about. All disgusting. Michael Brown, I'm a little more on the fence because I do think he wasn't a moral character. He wasn't passionate goodness. But I think in that case, that one. So, Ferguson, I think that's really where the Black Lives Matter movement was born. It may have existed before, but that's really where it came to the forefront. I think that's why that went. Because they were just kind of getting their baby going. Taking the first steps. Now they're going, but most of America is pretty tired of Black Lives Matter. They're fed up. They think of them as thugs for whatever reason because of some of the bad press they've gotten. And so, like the Tamir Rice shooting, for example, that one didn't really have that much coverage. A couple of weeks, it disappeared. Back now because the case is going on.
The grand jury, yeah, he's probably not going to get indicted.
Yeah. Right, and it's awful. I think it could be in that case. But same with Laquan McDonald. The footage is disgusting, but 4 weeks to a couple months later, and people will just forget. Probably because there'll be another one, which is sad to say, but that's what will happen.
You saw a lot of people defend Darren Wilson after the Michael Brown shooting, and even with the Tamir Rice shooting, the officer saw a kid with a gun, and he did the first thing he thought to do, whatever. I haven't seen that many people defend Jason Van Dyke, the officer that shot Laquan McDonald. The video pretty much speaks for itself. Josh, do you think that will have any bearing in whether or not the state's attorney and the mayor stay on in Chicago?
The thing about it is the Laquan McDonald shooting, you're right. I mean, pretty much everyone agrees that video is disgusting and that this guy just straight up murdered this kid. And I think that will get way more play than perhaps the fact that the cop is on trial. Like, they're going to try to keep the focus on Van Dyke. I mean, remember, we're also talking about Chicago politics here. As far as, like, corrupt and shitty things that Chicago politicians have done, I mean, what Emanuel did is practically quaint. In fact, I could even see people arguing, if we accept the fact that Chicago is just a cesspool of corruption, that by charging the officer after the fact anyway, he's doing the right thing because I think that a figure like Emanuel in a place like Chicago, if he chooses to ride the storm out, he will be able to do it. And I think as long as justice is done to Van Dyke in terms of the community and the protesters, they will let him get away with it.
Well, look at how many cops get off, though, because they were seemingly overcharged. Even George Zimmerman, he probably could have gotten him on manslaughter, and they weren't able to prove murder. Do you think that, this was a first-degree murder charge. Do you think that they could convict an officer of first-degree murder? Why?
The only
he didn't arrive there premeditatingly believing that he's going to kill this guy, although we saw him shoot a guy like this on the ground.
Him chasing the guy. But there's footage of him chasing him prior, and the first account was that Laquan came at him aggressively. Well, no, in the footage you see that he's going after him, and then he just kind of opens fire and doesn't stop. The only way that he'll be able to snake out of this is if he can prove the whole "I was under threat" argument. Rely on. And in this case, there was no threat. Maybe, Laquan had a knife, right? That's what was going on. So, he was walking up the street pissed off on drugs with a knife. But at no point does he, viciously lunge at the officer. At no point should they have felt threatened. There was no immediate danger. Unless you think that he can, throw the knife Matrix style and, kill the officers. But let's be real here.
Matrix style. It's not funny, but that was funny.
But that's not... That's not going to happen. It's not like the kid had a gun and he was contemplating shooting somebody. He had a knife. He was a good 10 or 15 feet away. There was no threat of violence unless the officer walked up to him and said, "Stab me."
I don't know, Josh. What do you think? The first degree murder is a high bar of proof to me. Do you think
it's a very hard conviction to get? I don't know. I'm sort of with you, and I'm not as certain as Eric. I feel like that. Especially when it comes to police officers claiming I felt my life was threatened, or the lives of other officers, because that's the way I think if I was his attorney.
Where they really can't claim that. The video is pretty definitive, but that still wouldn't account for the.
But remember, the video shows it, but it's what they hear in the courtroom. Again, the right attorney. Anything's possible, because just the statistics alone, cops get the benefit of the doubt.
But I wonder, because
I don't know if first-degree murder.
Is this, sorry, not to cut you off, but is this the chance for the government to come through and set a precedent for this? With all the police shootings we've seen, with all the white officer, black criminal violence, is this a chance where it could change? I want to believe it.
Well, you know what? As we said before, it's Chicago, so they might get it. They might be able to do it, and it'll have nothing to do with the law. You're right. If the first degree murder charge sticks, that will be an interesting shift, I think, in the way things go. So, I think to the question about Rahm Emanuel, it all depends on what happens with the trial. To the question about the trial, there's no way to know.
Well, that could go on years. Peter, do you think they can get a conviction for first-degree murder in this case?
It's going to be very, very difficult. The key issue, as I think Eric pointed out, is that the jury has to be convinced it was premeditated. Before the officer got there and pulled out his gun, he had to be planning to do it. And the jury can easily be swayed, first of all, by the officer's statement. Second, you have to sort of proactively prove what he was thinking, and that's always very difficult. And the idea of heat of the moment is one of the things that separates first degree from other murder charges. And the officer can argue clearly that, hey, I was swept up in the heat of the moment. If he thinks he's going to go down for something, then he's going to go down
shots?
for. Pardon?
16 shots, though?
Well, it's what happened before he pulled the trigger. That's where the difference is.
But I think firing into somebody 16 times also tells a story. If you're afraid for something, you shoot him a couple times. But firing another 13 after that, question.
Well, there was a case in Cleveland where a handful of cops shot up a couple's car and killed them well over 100 times. I don't remember the exact number, including one guy who jumped up on the hood of the car and just started opening fire, and they all got off. Officer Michael Brella.
Yep. So we'll see. We'll see. There's also the possibility, the officer could plead down to something. This trial will go on for a very, very long time, and it's in Rahm and everyone else's political interest that it does.
Gotta love the police system.
Yeah, a year from now, people are going to pay even less attention to these things.
All right. Well, this was another depressing edition of the Latest.com show. Every week I said maybe next week we'll talk about something fun, and this time, probably not. Probably the same stuff next week. So thanks for joining us. Thank you guys for joining me, and keep reading Latest.com.